was actually kind of afraid of this question because it's been a very strange summer, right? If you follow my cycle logic, which I've been talking about for a while, we transitioned from crypto spring to crypto summer on June 15th. And, many people, when they hear crypto summer, are like, oh, good, that's the big up. Well, actually, no, that's crypto fall. So crypto fall, that period kind of right after the halving is when you get the really big parabolic moves. Crypto summer is kind of a funky period. It's generally upward trending, although very slight. And in fact, a couple of the cycles have been pretty flat-ish. They're still generally up.
2023년도 암호화폐 투자를 했다면 최근 몇 달 동안의 가격이 조금은 이상하다는 걸 느끼셨을 겁니다. 2023년도 7월에 비트코인은 31.8K라는 최고점을 갱신한 이후에 비트코인과 암호화폐는 지속적으로 하락하는 추세를 보이고 있습니다. ETF와 같은 긍정적인 뉴스가 나오고 있음에도 말이죠. 대체 시장에는 무슨 일이 벌어지고 있는 걸까요? 시장은 세력 혹은 고래 투자자들에 의해서 조작되고 있는 걸까요? 영상에서 나온 모건 크릭 캐피털 매니지먼트의 최고 경영자로 있는 마크 유스코는 최근 인터뷰에 지금 시장은 뭔가 잘못되고 있다고 언급하고 있습니다. 그의 주장은 블랙록과 같은 대규모 플레이어들이 가격을 눌러 더 큰 포지션을 축적하기 위한 목표로 가격을 내릴 수도 있다고 언급하고 있습니다. 그의 주장은 현재 세력들이 물량을 확보하기 위해 공매도로 판매 압력을 증가시켜 가격을 낮추는데 힘쓰고 있다고 말합니다. 아직까지는 가설에 불과하지만 마크 유스코는 블랙록의 비트코인 ETF 승인이 확실하다면 이것은 당연한 일일 것이라고 믿고 있습니다. 지금부터 마크 유스코의 인터뷰 내용을 같이 보시죠.
We've been making higher highs and higher lows. So again, the trend is generally up, but this latest move down to Bitcoin sub 26 is starting to get close to that previous low, which, look, if we break that, the trend changes, and I don't like that. So, to your point, things are looking depressed. Other than hash rate still really strong, transaction volumes are okay, but the buzz is definitely down. You don't hear people talking as much about it. Maybe that's just the revamp of Twitter. I'm not going to call it X, by the way. And, engagement's down everywhere and people aren't really going there as much. I find myself spending more time on LinkedIn, actually, which is interesting. So that's a long rambling answer to say summertime is normally, actual physical summer is normally a time of lower volatility and lower volumes because people are out. And I think that was true again this year. Now, the difference between traditional markets and digital asset markets, regular markets, when people are away, things just shut down because, the markets are closed more hours than they're open. In the digital world, people can trade anywhere. So in theory, even if you're on vacation, you got your phone with you, you can still be active. But I just feel like there was a lull. Yet we've had some meaningful positive announcements. I think we'll talk about some of them. But generally, this is a meandering time kind of approaching the halving next spring. Liquidity, liquidity drives market. And I've said that for forever, and it's really true. And particularly in digital space, particularly, take something like Bitcoin, right? One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, always will. And it eventually, we all hope, becomes a unit of account the way we think about value, but that's not what people talk about, right? They talk about Bitcoin in something else, in dollars, usually. That's the number most of us talk about. But if you're in Argentina, you're talking about it in pesos, and that's, making new highs lately because the peso's in the toilet. If you're in Argentina, you're talking about it in bolivars, or in Turkey, you're talking about it in lira, all of which are down, those are down. So Bitcoin in those currencies is up, but the rate of change of dollar growth has slowed. And therefore, you think about it, right before the pandemic, we were in that $14,000, $15,000 range. They doubled the money supply. So we should be kind of in the 28-ish range. And we're kind of in the 26 range. So it's kind of where we should be if we think about it in Bitcoin per dollar. So in the absence of a lot of monetary stimulus, there's not a lot of translation change that's going to happen. So I think that's certainly part of it. And that leads to some malaise. Most of the stimulus in the economy is shifted to fiscal, right? Government's still spending like drunken sailor. Actually, I'm not sure a drunken sailor could spend nearly as well as our government, but they pumped $1 trillion dollars into the economy to kind of give us this boost that we thought. Yet, if you ask people how they're feeling about the economy, people are jumping up and down, right? Everybody knows somebody who lost their job or got laid off. Spending, while other than Taylor Swift tickets, spending is kind of muted. I mean, it's not rambunctious. So I think macro is medium and maybe even leaning toward downward, as people think of. I retweeted something today. I'm still gonna call them tweets too. I'm not sure what else we would call them, but
reposts.
Oh, it's a repost.
The most generic name ever.
Yeah, X-post, yeah, repost, all right. But I retweeted something that basically said bankruptcies were soaring. Like, is bankruptcy a synonym for strength? Haha. I mean, if bankruptcies are hitting all-time highs, that's usually not a really good thing. There's bank challenges, traditional banking challenges with the losses in their fixed income books. Fixed income markets are on pace to have their second negative year, which I think would be the first time in history of two back-to-back negative years in fixed income. So that's troubling a little bit. So it's just a very interesting time to be an investor, that's for sure. Something's wrong, and I can't put my finger on it. And, do you think it's something going on with Binance or Binance, depending on which part of the world you're from? Do you think it's some big person unloading? To your point about insiders buying and insiders selling, if your goal is to accumulate an asset, you actually don't go out and buy the asset and tell everybody you're buying. What the really smart investors have done over the years is they actually go out and short a little bit of the asset and then tell everybody how crappy the asset is in interviews and stuff, and then go buy it when the price goes down. So again, if you were somebody who was on the verge of being approved for an ETF and you were going to take massive share and you wanted to buy the asset cheap, and maybe you even wanted to put some of your own money in there too, you might be contributing to downward pressure in the short run. So yeah, I think there definitely could be a little bit of that. And so I would say it probably wasn't BlackRock or others buying that was pushing. It was, people looking at the FTX now being in the rearview mirror and people getting back to fundamentals and saying, all the selling that was going to happened, and all of the liquidations from leverage happened, when they kind of put Binance in the corner. I still think BlackRock's going to be the first one approved. When, that's another question we can probably talk about, but I still think they're going to be the first one approved. And I still think somewhere, and this is the part that I'm struggling with, there's somebody or some buddies who are selling. And one of the challenges of Bitcoin in particular is pretty closely held, right? Not that much of the total market cap actually changes hands on a day-to-day basis. So the free float, so to speak, is pretty low relative to the overall market cap. And so the fact that somebody or somebodies are still selling, because again, for every buyer, there's a seller. I'm just not quite sure where that's coming from, because I would have thought most of the levered longs had already been liquidated, in margin calls a year ago.
지금까지 마크 유스코는 블랙록과 같은 거대 세력들은 ETF가 승인되기 전까지 그들의 물량을 모으기 위해서 고의적으로 가격을 누르고 있을 거다라고는 이야기를 하고 있습니다. 큰 플레이어들이 실제로 가격을 조작하여 ETF 승인 이후에 상승을 위해 유리한 조건으로 가격을 만들고 있을까요? 과거 2017년도 이후부터 비트코인 관련 파생상품 거래가 출시된 날짜 이후로 비트코인은 단기적인 고점을 형성해 주었었습니다. 만약에 오늘 영상에서 나왔던 것처럼 마크 유스코의 말처럼 거대 세력들이 ETF 승인이 나오기 직전에 물량을 일부러 하락시키면서 그 물량을 모은 뒤에 하락 뒤에 상승이 나오게 된다면 이전처럼 어쩌면 그때는 다시 또 추가적인 상승이 아니라 하락을 통해서 그들이 원하는 가격대를 또 만들지도 모르겠습니다. 오늘의 영상이 재밌으셨다면 구독이랑 좋아요도 부탁드리고, 또 다른 여러분들의 의견이 있다면 댓글에도 소통하는 그 장을 만들어주면 더 다양한 정보를 주고받을 수 있을 것 같습니다. 지금까지 비트갱스터였습니다.